Pass the gosh darn rock. Hey yo, I'm trying, I ain't lying, and hosting this will be Brian. He posting like Kobe Bryant, he flying to see the pilot. Hit the hezzy, we got Jesse, opinions get kinda messy. A fan of out of lefties, from football to racing jet skis. This is Pass the Rock, don't stop the shot clock. Pass the slap shot, come on, now let's talk. Pass the rock.
That is such a beautiful way to start every Monday. Hello, everybody. It's Pass the Rock on a Monday for Lost Tribe. We got some new folks, including myself, as I've been off of the show for 2 weeks. Zach's been a regular, and we're getting Jack back from last summer just to do the background checks here. We have Zach, who's a huge Philly fan, Eagles, Phillies. I'll even throw the Flyers in there just for fun. We have Jack, who's mostly LA. We have the Dodgers. We have the Lakers, but we also have the Steelers, a little genealogy project there. He roots for the Steelers still. And you know where I'm, laying, because I got the two flags behind me, Pelicans and Saints. Also throw in the Padres, who are only a half game behind Jack's Dodgers. Guys, that's a big intro. Jack, how are you doing after an entire year off of Pass the Rock, and now you're back?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be back. I honestly, let's just get going. I'm so excited.
Awesome. And Zach, thanks for filling in for me for the past couple of weeks. Now we get to work together all summer as Jesse's out. How are you doing today?
Being an established regular on the show now, being here more consistently and longer than you two have been recently, it feels pretty good. Really excited to hop into another great episode of Pass the Rock. Really excited to get into all this great stuff that's happened over the past week.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. We talked about a lot of it in our Twitter spaces, but let's start the NBA Finals. The NBA season is over, and it's literally the best thing about the NBA is it's over for like a week, and then we get the draft going, and we keep everything going. But the Warriors win in 6. They grab a game in Boston for Game 6 with a huge run after going down 10 early in the first quarter. Just initial reaction, Zach. Is that how you thought it would play out going into Game 6 when the Warriors had the chance to kind of step on the Boston Celtics and get that finished?
Well, last week on Pass the Rock, it was before Game 5, and I predicted that Game 5 would be the first time that the Celtics lost back-to-back games in the playoffs. And I was proven correct with Game 5, easily going to the Warriors in the end of the day. And after that, you kind of just saw the wheels kind of fell off. Boston just wasn't really themselves Game 6, and they didn't really put it together. And overall, this kind of led to pretty overall easy Game 6 for the Warriors to close it out. And Steph Curry finally getting his Finals MVP. He's chased for so long.
Yeah, they really did what they had to. Draymond Green showed up pretty big in Game 6 as well. Jack, overall thoughts on the series and Game 6, the Warriors able to close it out?
Yeah, going into the series, I knew it would be a close one, but I thought the Warriors would be able to pull it out. But I was pretty convinced the whole time that there was absolutely no way the Warriors were going to go into Boston and take a game 6. The Boston is just known for having one of the best fan bases in the NBA. It's one of the hardest places to play as a visiting team. And I was like, as great as Steph Curry and the Warriors are, there's no way. And after the first, 3-4 minutes of the game, I was like, I'm feeling good. I like that call. And then the script completely flipped. Draymond Green was unbelievable in that game after having not the greatest series to begin with. And then I think that was a big part of the turning point. And the Warriors shooters just showed up and they closed out. That's what the Warriors do. I don't know why I ever doubted them in even on the road, but that's just what the Warriors do. And it's a hard-earned and well-deserved championship for the Warriors.
Yeah, that's how you beat a good crowd is great shooting, right? And so the Warriors are a team that have historically done that and obviously did that in Game 6. The key, like you said, was Draymond Green. He was on pace to have more fouls than points throughout the entire series, and then shows up doing the little things that nobody wants to do that he's made a career out of. Great passing, a shot here and there. and just getting under your skin and dealing with all that, getting rebounds where he can, and just making it difficult on the other team. So a great Game 6 win. I felt pretty confident going into the series that the Warriors would win. I think it's a great experience for those young Celtics players to have, their big three specifically, and then we'll see what they can do in the future. The East, obviously, a tough ride this year, so them getting through was a great accomplishment. That's not good enough for them, I'm sure, but taking Game 1, but ended up losing at home. That's a tough one, but not unexpected for what's going on. Steph gets his MVP finally. Jack, was there any other option at all, or was it a clear-cut thing?
Yeah, I think it was clear cut. I mean, Curry was absolutely ridiculous this series. I mean, it was a legacy series for Steph Curry because all the knocks on him throughout his career is that he doesn't show up in the finals. He's got 3 rings, but he's never won a Finals MVP. So he finally comes in here as the number 1 guy, clearly lights it up, wins his Finals MVP, and I don't know who else it could have possibly gone to. And I think he's proven himself as a top 10 player of all time, in my opinion.
Yeah, well,
wow, what a great segue to all the things we're going to talk about later today.
That's true. But before we segue, I just want to say, right?
I was going to come
Steph
to
Curry
you.
was the clear-cut favorite going in to win Finals MVP and clearly proved his worth as a Finals MVP. Andrew Wiggins should have also gotten some major consideration. Andrew Wiggins had an amazing series, showing up. I believe it was Game 3. He had over 20 rebounds. I mean, he was consistent from end to end, doing what he did. And Curry did have that one down game. Now, I'm not saying Curry shouldn't have won the Finals MVP. That award was pretty much his from the moment they made it to the finals. It was either going to be him or Jaylen Brown, in my opinion, depending on who won. But, I mean, if anyone else was to receive consideration, it'd have to be Andrew Wiggins. He had a fantastic series. Totally deserving of his first ring of potentially many, because this is, of course, Andrew Wiggins, all-star caliber player right here. But in all seriousness, Andrew Wiggins had an amazing series, and I'm sure he was definitely considered, but it was a unanimous vote for Steph for the Finals MVP. So,
and he was huge to get them out of that funk early in Game 6 to get them going, towards the victory. I agree with you. He should have gotten a few votes, and obviously it was going to go to Curry no matter what. I could see Andrew Wiggins maybe getting one down the road. We'll see if the Warriors can hang around. But in the end, it's got to either be Steph Curry or Andre Iguodala. I mean, let's be real. The coach on the bench gets his
Iguodala.
His 4th championship. So, but what an interesting
4 championships, 1 Finals MVP. Congratulations, Andre Iguodala,
Hall of Famer.
Iguodala, Hall of Famer.
Time to go off into the sunset, I think, and I think you've got to be happy about what he did there.
Maybe we'll have to see what Iguodala chooses to do.
Yep. But no, look, this is a team that wasn't really getting talked about too much. Obviously, early in the season, and then even mid to late in the season, they were the 3 seed, but not out of the West. But they weren't really at the top of everyone's board. I was looking at the Suns and the Bucks again, and everybody else. Hopefully, some people were hoping the Nets would pull something together, but they do it again. That's 4. Steve Kerr has 4 as a coach and 5 as a player. So where does he rank in like the best ever player coaches to come out?
Man, I mean,
I didn't put this in the notes. I just thought of it.
No, he's definitely.
Well, I mean, as a player coach, I don't really know if there's anyone necessarily better than him. I mean, yeah, Phil Jackson has all the coaching rings, but as a player, you didn't get that. You didn't, do all that much. I mean, and Popovich never played in the NBA, to my knowledge, of course. I don't think he did back.
No, I don't think so.
Plumbers. So, I mean, I already consider Steve Kerr to be arguably the 3rd best coach of all time. Yeah. As a player coach, he is the best of all time. There is no one better than Steve Kerr. I mean, as a player with hardware, he was a winner. He was a key component for, most of his teams. He contributed in some form on the court. Then off the court, he's been the mastermind for a dynasty.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, it was unfair of me to bring that up. I'll let you all do some research. We'll talk some more about Kerr next week. But yeah, I think it's to be noted that he was the GM in Phoenix and realized that wasn't really his role. Now, granted, of all the places to pick to go, picking to go to Steph Curry is not a hard thing to do. But back then, Steph Curry was not, he was a proven individual commodity, not a proven team commodity just yet. So, but no, look, great job for the Warriors. Let's get into some legacy questions. So, this Warriors team has 4 championships. Where do they rank among some of the more well-known dynasties of the NBA? The Celtics in the 60s and 80s, the Lakers in the 80s, Bulls in the 90s, the Lakers and Spurs in the 2000s. Where do they fit within that group? Jack, I'm going to start with you on that one.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think without much debate, the greatest dynasty of all time is the 90s Bulls, and I don't think they're quite there yet. I mean, they probably need a little bit more. Steph Curry, I would probably say they need to at least match them in championships before you can have that conversation. But I do think they're definitely on par with some of those 2000s dynasties, like my beloved 2000s Lakers and that 2000 Spurs dynasty also. I think they're probably around that same tier. You could probably also have the debate with like the 80s Lakers and Celtics, because I mean it's around they've won around the same amount of championships, and I mean you've got the Hall of Famers on both sides of that. But I don't know. I think this championship puts them in this conversation that they were not in before, and I think that you can really start having some of these debates at this point for sure.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
I mean, just to build off of that, I agree that the '90s Bulls are probably the best dynasty of all time. I mean, 6 years with Michael Jordan, 6 rings, 2 years without. I mean, of course, you don't have Michael Jordan, so you don't get you don't get anywhere close. I mean, I'm a fan of putting this team right up there with the '90s Bulls, and I also think that the Spurs 2000s dynasty should be up there as well, because not only did the Spurs win 4 rings, 99, 2003, 2005, 2006, in relatively close fashion, they were consistently a good or contending team from 1999 through maybe 2 seasons ago. They were at least good, and then they also won a championship in 2014. So that's why I said that the Spurs would actually be a better overall dynasty, even if they weren't like dominant. They were still a dynasty.
Yeah.
Like you had, Duncan, Ginobili, and Parker there for so many years, all great players who could have thrived on their own teams. That's a dynasty to me, even though it didn't produce more than 5 measly rings. So I would say that these Warriors could be the 3rd best dynasty of all time, behind those 2.
Interesting. So I'll be the old guy in this conversation and say the Celtics of the 50s and 60s are the #1 dynasty.
No.
There's
No.
people.
No.
There's Bill Russell who has
They
11
played against
rings.
Farmers. No.
He has 11 rings.
Farmers.
Look, I wasn't alive. I wasn't alive
They
back
played
then
against
either.
Farmers, Plumbers, and Wilt Chamberlain. Like that
11
that is
rings.
one amazing player who could play in any time.
Yes.
And then pretty much just whatever.
Okay. Well, Wilt only has 2,
Mike,
and that's a big statement.
I will also give you Mikan. I'll give you Mikan.
Okay. So, okay, let's put that aside for a second, since, I'm the oldest guy here and I wasn't alive when that was happening. Bulls of the 90s, definitely number one in my heart, just because that's who I rooted for back then too. I think the 80s Celtics and Lakers, because they had to play one another and because the Pistons were coming up at the end of the decade and won a couple, there was too much competition there for anyone to be a dynasty. So I think I have them lowest on this list. I think I also have to put the Lakers ahead of the Warriors and the Spurs ahead of the Warriors, both from 2000s. Kobe ended up with 5. The Spurs ended up with 5. I like Bulls, Spurs, Lakers, Warriors.
Okay.
Now, the Warriors are still going, though. They could still eke out 1 or 2 more. I think it's going to be really difficult. I think we might have watched their last one, but we'll see. They can still jump back in there. But that Spurs team, like you said, Zach, was scary for what, 10, 11 years?
More.
All of the remnants are gone now, except for Popovich.
From first championship to last championship, that's 15 years of dominant basketball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were in it every year. I mean,
Every year.
and multiple different pieces coming in. You
And even
started with
past the
Duncan and
last couple of years, they're
Robinson,
still great.
you know, going on through Robinson. So that's where I'm landing. And that Bulls team, I mean, they could have won 8 in a row had Jordan not decided to try to hit a curveball. But yeah, so let's move on then and talk about Steph Curry individually, where he ranks. Zach, I know you have a top 10,
I
and
do.
he may or may not have cracked that top 10. I have also put mine together, and I'll tell you where he sits.
All right.
And Jack will get your thoughts as well. Zach, you started off.
All right. So Curry in my top 10 is 8th all time. He is 8th on my list. The only players above him are Shaq, Wilt, Bill Russell, Magic Johnson, Kareem, LeBron, and Jordan. Those are the 7 guys I see as better than Stephen Curry legacy-wise, 100%. And Tim Duncan and Kobe round out my top 10. Larry Bird is not on my top 10.
Mm-hmm.
But I honestly think after the Finals MVP, 4 rings, carrying this dynasty, especially when you look at this roster, you don't think of this roster as like fantastic. Like you have, Curry, Wiggins, whatever's left of Klay Thompson right now, Draymond Green, whoever they decide to put at center as their starting lineup. You don't expect that lineup to be winning an NBA championship. You expect it to be pretty good. You don't expect, half of what Klay Thompson was and whoever they decide to put at center that night to win an NBA championship. I mean, Kevon Looney did a very nice job. I'm not going to discredit Kevon Looney's work. But what I'm saying is just with everything that Curry's been through, especially I feel like the best way to look at it is his 2015 championship and this championship, the ones where he was the true leader of the team. He's proven that he can lead any team to he can lead his team to championship level basketball. And I think that's really important when it comes to cementing legacy. And the Finals MVP is like the cherry on top to a player who has revolutionized the way that we see basketball, has revolutionized the way that the youth play basketball. You have middle schoolers chucking from 35 feet out, and of course, breaking half the time because, no one's Steph Curry. I really think that because he's changed the game and he's proven his worth as a player individually, I think he's in my top 10. And honestly, it's pretty easy.
Pretty easy to put him in the top 10. So
Easy.
I have a very similar top 10, except I have Curry 11th.
Ooh.
So I have MJ, Magic, Bird, LeBron, Kareem, Kobe, Shaq, Wilt, Duncan, and Russell all above Curry. Now we can get into the debate, and it's a tough debate of, how do you play now versus how do you play in the 80s? But I do elevate Bird just because he had a similar offensive prowess. He wasn't the shoot from half court guy that Steph Curry can be sometimes, but he also played in an era where you could get jacked when you tried to get into the lane. And there's something to be said there. And it used to frustrate me when Curry first came into the league because they played the then New Orleans Hornets a few times in the playoffs. And he just goes right through the lane and nobody fouls him. And that's just such a different game. Not to say he's not unbelievable in his time. He is. But I still elevate Bird above him because he had to deal with shooting in these much more physical times. The late 80s, early 90s Pistons, as an example, where you were just going to get an elbow to the face if you were, shooting in any great percentage. So I do have him 11th. I have him above obviously Durant, Oscar Robertson, Hakeem Olajuwon, that group. But I do have him right outside the top 10 with still, a third of his career left. Jack, your thoughts on our picks and maybe even on your own?
Yeah, wow. I think I lean closer to Zach than I do to you, Brian. I understand your arguments, but I personally I have Curry, I think 7th on my all-time list.
Wow.
Which is ahead of Magic and Bird, which is the controversial take there. The ones I have ahead of him are MJ, LeBron, Kareem, Kobe, Shaq, and Tim Duncan. Right? Wait.
Ooh.
Kareem, Kobe, Shaq. Yeah. I counted that right. So I have Curry 7th behind those 6 guys. And I honestly think I might be a little biased because I've grown up watching Curry's whole career play out, and
Right.
I've witnessed this greatness, and these other guys were before my time. But just watching Curry play basketball, I have never, other than LeBron, I've never watched a game and just been like, wow, I am experiencing greatness in the same way that I feel when I watch Stephen Curry.
Yeah.
The guy is, I mean, we know all about him. I don't need to go into it, but he is, I think I might be a little biased in my list.
A little biased. Look behind you. Look
Yeah,
behind
that
you.
is correct. Well, and I love
Yeah. Look behind you.
very biased, but
He's
I
not top five to me. I'm sorry. He's not top five.
Kobe is the fourth best of all time, but that is
not.
that's a different topic. I have Curry ahead of Magic and Bird just because of that feeling of awe that I have watching him, and he is just without a doubt the greatest shooter of all time. The way that he's revolutionized the game has not. I don't think it's happened since Jordan. So I think because of that, he's got to be higher.
Well, and he's done it in a different way. Kobe tried to be the next Jordan, and his game was very, very similar. Steph Curry came in and said, well, I'm going to do it totally differently. He plays a lot better defense, team defense now than he did when he first came in. But at first, all shooting, he's totally revolutionized the game in that way, no doubt. And I just think it happened at a perfect time for him because of how the game is played. And so, look, 11th all time in the history of NBA is much respect. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
And I love seeing him play other than when he's playing against my team because he's just that interesting to watch. I just think because he doesn't quite stack up on both sides of the ball, he as much as some of these other guys, and he definitely has a killer mentality when it comes to I need to step up now and win, kind of like LeBron did. Obviously, Michael Jordan did, several of these others on this list. But the fact that he kind of does it on one half of the court, puts him down a little bit. But any last thoughts on that, Zach?
I mean, I feel like his defense has mightily improved throughout his career. I mean, he's always been an underrated defender. Right. And this finals really showed, he is a good defender, especially a team defender like you mentioned.
Yeah.
I think that will forever be underrated for him, even though, I mean, he's great defensively, like compared to like your average player. Like you'd want Steph Curry on defense compared to your average player, I think. Not everyone would agree with that, but I think maybe people hold that against him in debates like this. Maybe it's just like, just the recency bias of him finally getting that finals MVP and having a really good series. But, maybe in a few years, people are going to underrate that defensive prowess that he has. And maybe we could start seeing him slide down people's lists again.
Yeah. And I think he's working on that. I think you're right. We could see it in this finals when he really knew this was his time to become the MVP if he was going to do it. And who knows, maybe his last opportunity. We'll see. But I just think in the end, when you look at the people on that list, he's definitely lower than a lot of them. But like I said, I still have him 11th. Okay. No disrespect there. But let's move into the 2022-2023 season as it starts in 3 days with the draft, which we'll get to. Are the Warriors in a position where you think they can repeat? Jack?
I mean, if you have Stephen Curry, you're always going to be in the running. I mean, obviously, when he got hurt, they were completely out of the running. But as long as Stephen Curry is healthy, they're going to be competing for the championship again next year. I have no doubt about it. And I also think that James Wiseman coming back is something that's going to be very interesting for them. He may be a bust. I mean, he's been hurt basically his entire career so far. We have no idea what we're getting from him. But it's going to be something. And if he can reach the potential that they definitely saw in him, and I saw in him when they took him number 2 overall, that's going to be a wild boost to this team because now you have a center that's like the missing piece to your team. You have a true big man that is young with a ton of upside, and you're adding that already on top of Poole and Curry and Thompson and Draymond and Wiggins. And I mean, it's a really, really, really stacked team. And they just won the championship and they're adding a potentially very solid center. So I think they're going to be right back in the running.
Okay. Zach, what about you?
I don't think they're going to be right back in the running. I think that they can compete. I think that they can, be, like if you're going to place a bet on it, I wouldn't say it's a bad bet. I just think that, especially with James Wiseman, you brought up a really good point with James Wiseman. He's a big center, a lot of potential and everything, but this team has been built around the perimeter. This team has been built from, this team has been built around the idea that, the center is playing, its defense and it's not really an offensive option. James Wiseman might not be an offensive option for this team right away. And I mean, we'll see how that happens with chemistry and everything. I have a few doubts about this Warriors team coming back and repeating. I mean, I think repeating is actually, it's only gotten harder ever since they did it a few years ago. So I actually don't like them to repeat, but I do think that they'll definitely compete in the playoffs again. No doubt in my mind about that. But repeating, it's a little too early to call anything for repeat, especially with, free agency hasn't even started. So many trades could be made. Like no reason to call the end of the season now.
No, I agree with you there. I'm just saying that I think that you can't count out the Warriors.
You can't count out the Warriors, but I'm not going to count them in automatically.
I wouldn't be surprised if they came out of the West again. Like you have Steph Curry,
but I'm not gonna put them as a lockdown. I'm not gonna say that I wouldn't be surprised.
It's not a lock.
No,
you're
correct. Yeah, and look, they had a pretty I wouldn't say an easy run, but they got the Mavs instead of the Suns, which helped out. And then you have these small market teams like the Grizzlies, the T-Wolves, and I'm just going to throw my Pelicans in there too, if and when Zion comes back, that are going to take a big step up. I'm not saying that they're going to be better than the Warriors, but all those teams are on their like youthful rise, while you still have teams like the Suns and the Mavs and the Jazz are probably going to disintegrate, but the Nuggets are still right there. The West is going to be tougher with these young teams stepping up. So I would lean to say that there's not going to be a three-peat. Plus, you have the entire East, which was a monster this year, and I think that happens again. So, what about the Celtics? Do they do kind of a typical? You lose a Super Bowl, you lose an NBA Finals, you go through a little bit of a slump, or do you expect them to be right there in the East again next year? Zach, we'll go to you.
I mean, it really depends on what they do this offseason. I'm not going to say I think they can compete. I think that they will compete to get back in the finals, but their biggest weakness this year was, their bench was just horrid in the finals. They had no help whatsoever. I mean, and even then, like the starters were, just not playing as well as they could have. I mean, they need to find the right bench pieces because Nick Stauskas is not going to be a good bench piece in the NBA Finals. Mm-hmm. And a lot of their bench pieces, just especially in the later Game 5 and 6, they didn't show up. They just threw themselves out there for like 15, 20 minutes and did absolutely nothing to contribute to the team. If they get the right bench pieces around them, then, I can see them going right back to the finals even. But if they fail to do so or fail to get anything substantial, they're just going to be another team in the East.
Yeah, I mean, let's remember the gauntlet they have here. Heat, Bucks, 76ers, Raptors. I'll say the Nets for now, just to say that for now. But
never count out Kevin Durant, I guess.
Exactly. So, although the last 2 years he's gone pretty quietly out of the NBA playoffs. So, but anyway,
quietly he lost because he had his foot on a line one year. It's not really quiet.
Yeah. But they haven't made the super deep run even to the Eastern Conference Finals. So, and losing Kyrie is not going to help them. But we'll talk about that in a second. There's a lot there. Jack, what do you think about the Celtics' chances in the East?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Zach. I think there's work that needs to be done. If they run it back with this team, I don't think they make it back to the finals. But I think that you can win a championship with the core of Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Marcus Smart. I think there's 100% they need work on that bench. That they had a pathetic showing for the bench in the finals, and it's probably the reason they lost the series. And also Tatum not really having that big game and stepping up. But I do think that Tatum is a alpha caliber player that can win you a championship. And I think with some work, they can be right back there.
My alpha caliber player is not texting Kobe Bryant saying I that's my only knock against Jason Tatum. He ended this season being a little corny, a little Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah.
Like I think Cat is the corniest player in the league. But I'm just saying, everyone wants Jason Tatum to be that guy, and I think he can be. He just needs to get it together. He didn't have that, alpha mentality in this final series. And that's when it really matters. You can have it for the entire regular season. You can have it for the entire playoffs. If you're like, you might get the reputation there, but if you're in the finals and you don't step it up for your team, you're not going to win a championship. And at the end of the day, that's what every player wants to do.
Yeah, he needs to stop drinking the Kool-Aid of people telling him how great he is and focus in on what's going on in that moment, not trying to get the publicity for texting Kobe and doing all that other stuff. But if he wants to be the alpha on that team, which it seems that he does, and it seems that that's his role, then he needs to focus there. And, so let's do a little bit. Let's go through a few teams. We're going to kind of do a little quick draw here where you can give me some quick thoughts. We're going to start with, and the question really is, who has the biggest pressure this offseason? What do these teams need to do to kind of turn it around? And we're going to start with Jack with his Lakers. Where do you go from here? Do you stick with the current core, or, where do you go? You have AD, you have LeBron, you have Westbrook, you have all the role players. What is your vision for this offseason for them?
Yeah, I think you stick with the current core out of necessity. I don't think you get rid of LeBron or AD. I think the rumors about them getting rid of AD, I could not possibly imagine them trading. Westbrook, as much as I would love to get rid of him, I don't think it's possible. I mean, I don't see a team wanting to take on a $40 million contract for Westbrook's caliber of play and us getting anything in return. I mean, we've had these offers on the table where we have to give up a pick to get rid of Westbrook. I'm not a fan of that. We have few enough picks as it is. We've already given them all away to Washington and to the Pelicans and to just about everyone who wants one. So I don't think we can realistically get rid of Westbrook. And because of that, we're kind of in a bind as far as moves that we can make. And I think we just hit free agency, try to do what the Lakers do and draw in people just because we are the Lakers. And other than that, hopefully run it back. I love the Darvin Ham hiring. I think he's going to motivate the team in a way that Vogel wasn't able to. Yeah. And hopefully we get better results with AD healthier.
Yeah, you're right. There's no picks to offer, really. I mean, obviously, you have some picks, but there's nothing that's going to really entice. And what team wants to take on Westbrook in the end? So I think in the end, the key for the Lakers' success, and it couldn't happen in New Orleans, and it hasn't really happened in LA yet, is getting Anthony Davis motivated to do the work in the offseason, to be ready for the regular season so that he can actually play. When he plays, they're great. That's when they won their asterisk championship. Okay, when he was playing.
But championship.
You said that just to get a reaction out of me. I know you did.
No, I firmly believe it. If you don't have to win a tough game in the road, is it really a championship? Anyway, he's got to play. He's got to step up, just like Drew Holiday used to try to push him to do when he was in New Orleans. And obviously LeBron has probably tried to push him to do in LA. He's got to be part of it. He can't be brittle like he's been. And I know it's hard to change somebody's injury history. It's not all mental, it's some physical. But for them to do anything, he's going to have to step up. Let's move back over to the East. Zach, let's do your 76ers here. What's keeping them from being that team that played the Warriors this year? What do they need to do in the offseason?
I mean, the bench is a big issue. I mean, there was a lot of inconsistent bench play from the Sixers. You had some role players who fit in pretty well, some who just weren't really the best of fits. And the most, the biggest issue was coaching, but it looks like the Sixers are going to be sticking with Doc Rivers, unfortunately. I'm surprised that the Lakers didn't take him. We were kind of just like, hey, come on,
we didn't
give him a chance. Come on, it's Doc Rivers. Everyone likes Doc Rivers. If we want to actually compete next year, we need our young guys to play and preferably to sign some veterans who have that chip on their shoulder. Patrick Beverley was kind of like a name that was thrown around a bit. I would love Patrick Beverley on this team. If we could trade for him or sign him, I don't even know if he's a free agent or not, but I'd love him on this team. He's one of those players that's never played for Philly that you think would have played for Philly just because of their mentality. We need a guy like that, and we need more consistent bench play overall. I mean, there's also trade rumors involving Tobias Harris and Matisse Thybulle. I mean, if you can find a really good third option, fourth option to, get back in return, I'm not opposed to losing Tobias Harris. I think Matisse Thybulle, I'm a little more hesitant to trade only because of his defensive prowess, but he hasn't really shown anything on the offensive end, so I can understand why a deal might be made there. But really, it's around, getting Embiid help. Let's hope that Harden, with a full offseason now, can make the right preparations to at least, look a little bit like himself in Houston and his early time in Brooklyn. Let's hope that he can get that form back so that maybe, he can continue to be productive for us. If he doesn't get that form, it's going to be a lot harder for the Sixers, but I wouldn't say impossible for them to compete. But yeah, bench play, hold the coach hostage until he plays the young guys. Literally hold him hostage. I need Paul Reed to be our backup center. He has the potential, and hope that the stars align and maybe make a trade for the right guy.
Yeah, they have to get Doc Rivers has to get out of that old school thinking that you don't play rookies. I can tell you that it happened with the Pelicans this year when they weren't playing Herb Jones and Trey Murphy and then Jose Alvarado. They weren't doing anything. They languishing in 12th. They start trusting these young guys, giving them minutes. They're never going to get better on the bench, and it allows your team to grow. And obviously, you can still work on those lineups where you have the veterans playing the minutes they need to play. But when you have that deeper bench, then, generally you're going to have more success. So,
Paul
Reed on that.
Paul Reed was making rookie mistakes because he wasn't getting enough play time in the playoffs.
Right.
I mean, in the regular season, he was making rookie mistakes in the playoffs because he wasn't getting enough play time in the regular season. He's a third-year player. He should be our franchise backup center by now. He should be our guy.
Yep.
But he's not because Doc Rivers commits like 20 war crimes every night when he's coaching the 76ers.
Exactly.
You guys think
shocking the Lakers didn't want him.
I'm not exaggerating. So many bad decisions with rotations. So many bad decisions.
Well, let's move off of our teams and talk about another team that really should be part of the conversation. Should have been part of the conversation this year, but maybe the COVID issues with Irving were part of the deal. But the Brooklyn Nets, we say that we see that Kyrie may be on the trading block. You have a couple of names: Lakers, Clippers, Knicks. I don't know what the Lakers are giving up other than AD.
Russell Westbrook he's a net. It's gonna be the reuniting of KD and Russ in Brooklyn.
Oh, what a like dumpster fire trade that would be.
If that happened,
I would love it for one.
Yeah, I bet you would.
That would be the craziest because then you have LeBron and Kyrie in LA. And then KD and Russ in Brooklyn. Imagine if those two met in the finals. That would be insane.
Yeah.
Wild.
So,
but let's see if that happens first. Kyrie's potentially going to be on the open market, which means he could probably sign anywhere. So at most, we're looking at a sign and trade. I kind of like the Clippers as contenders to make a package. I mean, if you can keep Kawhi and Paul George, pretty much if you can keep Kawhi on that team, I think you have a real winner with that Kawhi-Kyrie connection. That could be really good. Paul George would be an amazing piece to keep as well, but you never know what their asking price is. I think the Clippers could be a sleeper to get Kyrie if he's going to try the open market and maybe a sign and trade goes into place.
But let me ask this question. I'm going to ask it to Jack. Do you want Kyrie? You said you wanted him on your team. Obviously, that's in trade for Russell Westbrook, so that's a whole different question. After what happened this year, do you really want Kyrie on your team? Do you really think there's a path for success there?
I mean, look, it's definitely you're taking a massive risk when you bring him in, but I think most of the COVID-related issues are going to be behind us at this point, so the vaccine shouldn't be too much of a problem. And I think that, I mean, Kyrie has a history of just disappearing at times, but I think you take a risk like that for that talent. And especially if you're in the Lakers position, if you can somehow, some way find a way to get him on the roster, which I don't think is very realistic. But if somehow it does happen, or you have the opportunity to make it happen, you have to give it a chance. because I think that's absolutely our best chance to compete for a championship next year.
For the Lakers, it's the best option because Westbrook.
Yeah.
But
can I say one more thing? We have the Knicks here listed as a potential contender, a potential suitor for Kyrie Irving. If Kyrie goes to the Knicks somehow, some way, this is the Knicks we're talking about. I expect him to play for every team in the Atlantic Division. If I can go from the Knicks to the Sixers to the Raptors, and then and maybe he'll retire in Toronto. I expect him to play for all 5 teams in the Atlantic Division. I expect him to be
he can't play in Toronto until he gets the vaccine.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. He can't play in Toronto. Damn it, Kyrie. Come on.
But no, that would be interesting. But yeah, look, he is way too much of a red flag for me to, I agree with, trading. If you're trading him straight up for Russell Westbrook, which is not going to happen, yes, that's the upgrade you like. But even then, I think him, AD, and LeBron, that has all sorts of like that just has to be a reality show and nothing further. I just don't see that being successful. Let's move to the smaller markets. I know you two, you only root for big market teams. Let me bring you down with the rest of us that have shorter windows. We really have to make things work on rookie contracts. Which team of the 4 I'm going to list do you think have the biggest pressure or have the biggest opportunity to step up? The Timberwolves, the Grizzlies, the Pelicans, and I threw the Hornets in there. Please feel free to throw in a few others if you think. Which of those 4 or more teams do you think can step up in this offseason, Jack?
I mean, for me, I think it's your New Orleans Pelicans. I think that that core that they have right now of Zion, Ingram, and McCollum could actually it can make some noise in the playoffs. And I really, and they've got some great young pieces around them. I mean, Alvarado had a ridiculous season out of nowhere. And I love Herbert Jones. He's one of my favorite players in the league. Jackson Hayes has looked nice at times. I mean, this is like a very, very solid young team. And even if next year is probably not the year they go into championship contention, but I think they're definitely a solid playoff team for next year with that core. And we have a whole offseason ahead of you to make some moves in the draft or in free agency and add some more young talent. I think the future is bright, and I think that the present is bright for the Pelicans.
Yep. All right, Zach, looking at the rest of those teams, who else can step up?
Oh, come on. I knew from the moment you asked, I knew exactly who I was going to say. The Memphis Grizzlies, the number 2 seed in the West.
Yep.
You cannot tell me that their future is not bright. They have a great young core around them. And if they sign even one veteran forward that's able to mesh well in that system and mesh well with that team chemistry, that was amazing last year, they're going to be instant favorites to me. John Morant is, he's doing amazing. I don't think they're going to be favorites to maybe win it all, but they're going to be favorites in the playoffs.
Yeah,
I can see them going right back to that 2 seed. Mm-hmm. If they keep this core, keep that energy, keep, playing this modern style of NBA basketball, this modern grit and grind kind of thing with Memphis, they keep playing the way they are and keep most of the same guys. I can see them going right back to the top of the playoffs, being a favorite seed. There's no question about it. I like the Pelicans core. I think the Timberwolves have they have a decent core with Anthony Edwards and Cat, but it's not as good as the Pelicans. And the Hornets have LaMelo, which means they can attract some free agents, but they're not ready yet. They're not ready to be a real force in the East. There's too many forces in the East. They need more time. It's the Grizzlies. They're already a force in the West.
And what's interesting in the Southwest Division, literally since the inception of the division, it's been the Texas teams. It's been the Rockets, it's been the Mavs, it's been the Spurs. Now I think you're seeing a little turn. Obviously, the Mavs are still around. The Spurs and Rockets in a little bit of disarray. The Spurs made the play-in, but that was it. But I do think the Pelicans and the Grizzlies both step up to take over that division, and then it's a question of – I agree with you. I think the Grizzlies play really well together. I think they're one piece away. Obviously, they were the 2 seed this year, but
just one good veteran forward. They already have Jaren Jackson Jr. down low. They also have, I think they have Valanciunas.
No, he's a Pelican.
Yeah. No, Steven Adams. I think it's Steven Adams. Steven Adams is a great veteran voice. They just need some forward to just fill in, be a good veteran punch, even on the bench. They don't even need a starter. They just need to find someone to just, be a good team leader to maybe not even lead, just to be there for the culture.
Yep.
Let's get more talent.
Yeah.
They don't need a ton. They can make probably no moves and still be a contender.
Yep. I do want to we're running out of time. I want to get to a quick baseball topic in a second, but really quickly, NBA draft is Thursday. We're going to be doing Twitter Spaces on Thursday, talking all about the first round of the NBA draft. One question for both of you: who's going first overall? Is it Jabari Smith? Is it Chet Holmgren? Or is it somebody else from the field? Jack.
I think it's Jabari Smith. I think he's overall the best player in the class. I'm not a big Chet Holmgren fan. I think he's too much of a stick figure to really, like, at that size, be that successful in the NBA. But I think that Jabari Smith overall, with his shooting ability, his defensive ability, like all around, I think he's the best player in the class, and I see no reason why he shouldn't go number one.
Zach.
I'm in the same boat. I think that Jabari Smith would be, like the best pick for this draft, but this is the Orlando Magic we're talking about drafting first overall, so I can totally see Chet Holm. I can totally see Chet going first overall, and I'm not a huge fan of Chet either. I don't really like how his play, could transition over to the NBA. I don't like it, but he's up there as like that other guy to be there. But I think that Orlando, I can see them picking Chet, even though I don't think it's the right move.
Yeah, I mean, Chet Holmgren just screams Gonzaga bust to me, like every other player that's come out of Gonzaga.
Like Adam Morrison bust.
Exactly. Yep. Other than John Stockton, okay, who played for Gonzaga before we knew Gonzaga was a thing. I don't know that I would pick Chet Holmgren at 8 when the Pelicans pick if he dropped that far. Playing in the West Coast Conference is one thing, but he's going to have to put on some pounds somewhere, or else he's going to be destroyed. So just a little NBA tidbit, but join us on Thursday night as we go through the entire first round on our Twitter Spaces. That's at Lost Tribe Sports. MLB, really quickly, I want to say one thing, and just to remind everyone that the playoffs have changed this year to where 6 teams in each league are going to get there. I do want to name that the Yankees, Guardians, Braves, and Phillies are surging a little bit.
My Phillies, baby, my Phillies.
I was just excited. The Padres got swept over the weekend. We're still only a half game back of the Dodgers. So that's
pretty impressive.
We played the Guardians a lot.
So how do you think the new playoff format impacts the second half of the season? Do you think there's more going on at the trade deadline or less? Do you think teams that are going to end up the 6th seed really care about being the 6th seed? There's not much chance there, or it's baseball. If you have the right number of pitchers, knowing that the first round, which is the 3 seed versus the 6 seed and the 4 seed versus the 5, those are 3-game series. So you only have to win 2 games. Do you think it impacts the second half of the season at all, Zach?
I think it absolutely does. I think being in the wild card spot, it still means you're back in September baseball. It still means that you're back in October baseball, potentially. I think it matters a lot for these teams. I mean, you look at the wild card standings, you can really see where that line is of where, teams are, in the running to make it and where they're not really there yet. I mean, we could see some movement, but like in the American League, you really see it's really a 3-team race right now. 4 because there's 3 wild card spots, but Toronto's 2 games ahead. Cleveland and Tampa Bay are right there at the wild card, and then Boston's only half a game back. Those are the only teams that are really there because then the next team's they're 4 games back from the wild card. I think right now we're just seeing who's the real contenders in each league, and then for the National League, you have San Diego 2.5 games ahead. Then you have San Francisco and Atlanta right now on those spots. And then you have Milwaukee half a game back, St. Louis half a game back, and my Phillies 2.5 game back. 2.5 games back. And the next team, 6.5 games back. So I think it's really good to see in the MLB how this new playoff structure has shown where is that line of like good teams versus like mediocre and bad teams. I feel like that's what the new playoff format is really going to show, because teams that are contending for that wild card spot are at the very least good teams. Teams that are not really in the running yet, or just not in the running, period, they're not really good. They're not good this year. We can kind of count them out, if they don't really get on any like hot streaks. And baseball's not known for its its hot streaks. It's known for being extremely unpredictable. So we never know. Maybe the Diamondbacks still make a play to be like the second wild card spot. They're 6.5 games back. They could totally make it. Like, you never know.
Yeah, well, and let's be real. The MLB has always had the least number of teams of any league to make the playoffs. So getting to 6 isn't like, half the teams are making
Yeah,
it.
it's not crazy like the
Right.
NBA is, where 20 teams make
Exactly.
some kind of playoffs. I'm still against the play-in tournament. I liked 16 because it was fine, but like adding 4 more for a play-in tournament, still not a fan of that.
Jack, any thoughts on the expanded playoffs and what it does for the MLB?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest place that has an impact is on the trade deadline. I think that the teams that are sort of on the cusp of the wild card spots are going to be less willing to part with pieces at the trade deadline, and I think that there are going to be more buyers, which I think will result in less trades. I think that there's going to be much more demand than supply for big name players at the deadline, and I think it's going to result in less trades and less teams making improvements, which I'm a little afraid for my Dodgers in that department because we really need some bullpen help.
Well, and let's be real.
Your team needs bullpen help.
We do.
Your team needs okay.
Closer is awful.
Okay, your team needs bullpen help, Mr. 40 wins over here.
But I do think Jack's right. I think the fact that in a normal year, the Dodgers, Yankees, Red Sox can buy whoever they want with whatever farm hands they have to trade away is going to be a lot tougher this year because you're going to have 8 teams. Now, granted, a team like the Cleveland Guardians isn't going to like mortgage their entire franchise just to make sure they make the wild card, but they're going to be in conversations that they weren't in before. The Dodgers and Yankees and Red Sox will still have the most money and be able to do most of the things that they want. But if I'm Jack, I am a little worried because there is a little bit of competition now. And, maybe they don't get everybody they got last year at the deadline, which was insane, in order to make that run and eventually lose in the playoffs anyway.
We beat the Giants.
Jack, do not tell me that your team has a bad bullpen when you have a run differential of over 100.
Craig Kimbrell is the worst closer in baseball.
Well,
I have to say that.
Who?
Craig Kimbrell is the worst closer in baseball at this point.
Corey Knebel. We literally pulled him from the closer role. We have Brad Hand closing games when it should be Sir Anthony Dominguez.
Look. In the end,
is the future. Come on.
The Dodgers can have a terrible bullpen, and the Phillies can have a terrible bullpen. Those things aren't mutually exclusive.
Yeah, but the Dodgers do not have the worst bullpen of a contender. That is the Phillies.
We do have the worst
beyond.
I think we're using the word contender loosely when we talk about the Phillies, but we'll see how it plays out.
I swear to God, we're making it. We're going to make it. We're making it back.
Look, there's a ton of baseball talk. We're still in NBA talk. I'm sure we'll stay in NBA talk most of the summer anyway. But Jack, thanks for coming back and joining Pass the Rock. And Zach, a rock, as always, for Pass the Rock. So thank you for that. And
Always
we will see everyone next week. Check us out Thursday, Twitter Spaces, talking about the NBA draft.